Hi! As you might know, or probably could guess from the logo behind me, this year I will be participating in the MLC. And today I was thinking that we should go through my picks during the draft and what I've chosen to do with them since the draft. The generic goals I had for my draft was a TnT list, highly preferable, which is why I first picked the TnT list, a Turbonos list, and I also wanted a anti-creature list. I think that want was a bit overrated. I actually don't think it's that needed for the tournament. It might still be good to have. I haven't actually planned my matchups yet, but I still got it. And then for the last pick, I just wanted the best available, preferably falling into the mid-range or Turbonos category. And I actually got it in John's Dargo, which fell all the way down to my fourth pick. So to go through my picks in order, I started with picking up TnT Breakfast Hulk. I think that's a really strong deck. It's really hard to interact with going for the creature-based lines. Then on my second pick, I actually had an interesting choice. I was expecting to get Mardu Farm with Dargo Timna, but when it came to me, I actually had Corvold available as well. Corvold, I think, might be the better pick. I'm still not sure if I should have taken it, but I'm still pretty happy with Dargo Timna. Timna does go under the radar a lot more than Corvold, and having like access to card draw and command zone is pretty great. So I think that might be a safer pick, but Corvold is fun. I cannot deny Corvold being a great pick. On my third pick, I got Tevesh Ishai, Humility Adnos. It's really interesting. It's a bit slower than I expected for an Adnos list, but it's a mid-range Adnos list, so it's pretty reasonable. Most decks does have a kind of hard time to go through Humility, which the deck is built around. So I think it might still be a great pick, especially for more grindy matchups. And my last pick was John the Dargo with Ikra as the partner. And that deck has been real gas. It's really fun to pilot. It does one thing, and that thing is go. At this time, all of my decks has been approved by the tournament admins. And there was only one deck that got rejected on the first pass. The rest got through on the first pass. So we'll cover that as well. And with that said, let's go on to the decks. So my first deck is TnT Breakfast Hulk. I had actually, before this MLC was announced, played quite a bit of TnT. And I started out playing Hermit Druid, but over time I kinda like transitioned more to a mid-range deck. And at the end, I was actually kind of building around the card Fiend Artisan. And this slots pretty well into the Hulk list as well, because finding like a cannon rector of the Fiend Artisan and stuff like that can be pretty great. And it's really hard to interact with the Fiend Artisan in play. You really have to respect it, or it can just go away with the games without casting any cards. I also kind of building out the Divining Witch. I always misunderstood Divining Witch. It doesn't actually sacrifice itself, so it's really strong in like just end step consulting for Oracle, and then main phase winning with just a creature spell and an activated ability. Because through rule of law, and it's harder to interact with, so that's pretty great. My first version of the list got rejected. They rejected it on the basis that it wasn't unique enough. I went past using a lot of the Turbo Hulk packages. I can understand where they're coming from. I was kind of sad because I'm pretty married to all of the choices, which is not a great way to build decks, by the way, but yeah, that's how I work. So in my addended lists, I changed out pretty generic pieces to interaction spells, which I might get punished for. Dark Confidant being a bit slow, and Swords for Shallow Grave, Slaughter Pact, Natural Order, and Entomb, which are all pretty good Hulk pieces. I don't disagree with any of the original picks, by the way. This is just how I like to play. I think the original author of the deck is Jamaican Dude, or Shawnee, from the MLC as well. And I really respect him as a player. I really respect his deck. I just wanted to go in a different way with my lists. I also think Stony Silence is a really important card for me. So in my division, as you can see here, I will be playing these three other players 4 times during the league. And all of them are kinda artifact reliant. So I really think Stony Silence is a big slam. I think TnT Hulk will be at least the deck I start with when I'm playing my division. I might change over time, I might try different things out. But I think TnT Hulk will be like the most stable deck to play into my division. It doesn't really have any cool tech. I think Fiend Artisan is the actually coolest deck in the deck. And if you want to see the whole deck list, except for just going through it, I will be linking it in the description. The second deck I drafted was Dab Farm by Hermit Druid, or also known as Nathan, and Callahan from Playing with Power. This deck is really fun. It really leverages Dargo as a commander, as well as having Tymna as a backup. Dargo goes really fast. It's really easy to get Dargo down like turn 1 or 2. I kept it pretty similar to his list, but I decided to add Razaketh. Razaketh with Dargo is really strong, because Dargo usually is costing 1 red and counting himself, so when you sack into Razaketh, he negates his own command tax. That makes Razaketh really strong with him. Like, just sack Dargo, finding Jeweled Lotus makes you have 3 tutors with Dargo and Razaketh. That usually just wins you the game. So I focused on adding Reanimate effects, Entomb effects, and Razaketh. I also added Imperial Recruiter. I did this change in Beyond Dargo as well, because I think Imperial Recruiter is really strong in Dargo lists. It is a 2-card combo with either Dockside or Ruthless Technomancer, and also it finds Dockside, which is pretty good with Dargo and in general. The combo is also just creature spells, which is really hard to interact with. I also chose to add Lurrus, kind of as a support for Razaketh, because like just casting Animate Dead or Dance of the Dead over and over again until they resolve is pretty good. You also can mill yourself a bit more aggressive with Lurrus in the deck, since you can either reanimate him or have him in play and play Breach from your graveyard. That's pretty strong. Astra Maker is also a really good mid-range engine, or grind engine, that can discard Razaketh. The cards I chose to cut were Wheel of Misfortune, because I don't really like it in decks that doesn't need it, and I don't think Tymna decks need it that much. Yogwill is a great card, I really like it, but it's kind of awkward in like Breach-centric decks. Like, casting it to storm off and then having Breach in hand as you're out is really awkward. Goldhound isn't legal for us, it wasn't in the deck when I got it. Goldhound would be a slam dunk, I really like it, but sadly I can't play it. And the other cards I think are kinda redundant, and like, all cards are great. Like, there's not often there's bad cards in the CDH list. Infernal Plunge can be a bit hard to have enabled, we have so many sacrificing effects. Stitcher Supplier is just kind of extra, you don't really need it in my experience. Nash is a card, I haven't tested it, I don't think it's bad, I just don't know how it works, and I don't really want to include cards that have high variance and that I don't actually have any experience with. Flamescroll Celebrant is kind of the most questionable cut, in my opinion. Silence effects are great, it's one of the few ways we have to interact on the stack. Maybe I shouldn't have cut it, but then again, third or fourth silence effect usually feels a bit redundant, and also we can reanimate Ranger Captains. I had a game yesterday when I played the Ranger Captain 3 times with reanimate effects and my own, so a fourth silence could be a bit redundant. Staying on the Dargo theme, I thought we might go through my Yond Dargo list as well. Yond Dargo plays kind of similar to Dab Farm or Dargo Tymna, but there are some really important differences. For one, Ikra does nothing. Or not nothing, but very little for the deck. You really need to have some kind of advantage or payoff in your starting hand, or you will just flounder. But the deck instead becomes way more explosive. Dorks help, because Dorks are at least 1 mana, gets 2 Dargo mana. This deck plays Gilded Goose, which is really fun. I cut Gilded Goose immediately when I first saw the deck, only to realize that Gilded Goose is kinda busted with Dargo. It's almost another Jeweled Lotus, and Jeweled Lotus is crazy good with Dargo. The main payoffs are either Ruthless Technomancer or a Burnt Offering into like Adnos, Culling the Weak, a tutor into Adnos. But green also gives us Eldritch Evolution effects, which helps us find Razaketh, which, as I said earlier, is really great with Dargo. So this deck is way more focused on payoffs with Dargo than the Tymna Dargo list I ran. The list that MLC provided us with was by the Walking Dude, but shortly after the draft, Connor, or Sinner, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, reached out to me with his list, which I way more agree with. As you can see here, the Walking Dude plays more of a mid-range deck in my opinion. And I don't think this deck is positioned well enough to play mid-range engines at all, basically. The only real cards here I could see myself playing are like maybe Dualcaster Mage Twin Flame. Grim Hireling is great, but it's a slow card in the deck. Rain of Filth is good, I guess. But I play more like the deck Connor or Senner sent me. As you can see here, I cut the Hermit Druid because I don't really like Hermit Druid without Thassa's Oracle. He says it works really well for him. I believe him, but I don't think it will work well for me, the way I play. I really don't like just slamming, easy to interact with, telegraphed wins. And that's how I feel Hermit Druid plays in this deck. Other than that, I cut the Dork. Crop Rotation. Crop Rotation is an interesting card because it gives you instant speed wins. That does have a lot of value, but I don't value it that much. Insolent Neonate is kind of like, you go down so much on cards in the deck where you don't have card value to begin with, or card drawing potential to begin with. So it's kind of hard for me to play it, I think. Life, Death, and Shallow Grave are the two cards I'm most sad about not playing, or the ones I think have most merit. Life, I actually missed before submitting that Life, you can sacrifice your lands to Dargo with it. That makes the math on Life, Death much better. Like, it's more worth to include than when it's just the death bit, because like you don't need life with Razaketh in this deck. Like you could need it, but it's so niche. A Shallow Grave, it's a good card. The biggest reason to run it was to reanimate Hermit Druid with it in the deck, and I got Hermit Druid, so I felt like the reanimate effect was a bit too niche. And I added the Ruthless Technomancer Imperial Recruiter Magda lines. Also, Impulsive Pilfer is great in Dargo. You can sacrifice it to Dargo and then get a treasure after to cast your payoffs, which is really helpful. It's also fodder for all the other sacrifice effects while giving you mana. Darthy Voidwalker is great because we're milling out our opponents. It makes it easier to shortcuts to I win the game. If you use middle people, they might at sometimes like argue that you don't actually have the win, and maybe you don't even have it. So Darthy isn't really needed, but it's good to have as a backup. And it's also kind of interesting to compare the two Dargo lists. This is a comparison between my two Dargo lists. As you can see, most of the black-red packages are included in both lists. Like the Dargo list runs Lightning Bolt, Wheel of Misfortune, because Wheel of Misfortune, you need a way to refill your hands at times, so with Wheel of Misfortune is way more important here. Lightning Bolt, I run like a Braid instead. It's a more generic removal spell, and Slaughter Pact, kind of the same thing. You could see it as playing Fire Covenant instead. Other than that, it's only green spells that are unique to the Jund Dargo. And the same almost goes for the Tuna Dargo as well. I do run more reanimate effects, so that's something they could share. But other than that, most of these cards are not able to be shared, which is really interesting. Like, the decks play a lot differently, more differently than you would think, given that the red-black package is the core of the deck almost. But green actually really changes how you play it, which is fascinating. So the last pick to talk about, but the third pick in my draft, is Ishai Tevesh HIMAN, or HIMAN. It's HIMAN with an I instead of an E. It's Humility Ishai Midrange Adnos, is the meaning. And as you can see, I run some creatures, more than you would expect from a Humility deck, probably. A Cannon Rector with Tevesh is Humility at the times you want it. Other than that, it's like Esper value, mainly. Skull Clamp is sweet with Tevesh. Paladin class is interesting. I haven't actually played with it yet. I think it should be good. It's helpful when, like, you don't have that many silences that aren't creatures, and if there's a humility in play, it actually helps you being able to combo. The biggest thing with the deck is you can run most of the hate most decks can't run. Rest in Peace is sweet. Out of Time is a really good board wipe. Humility is great. Most decks can't run Humility. Grafting Cage, good. And then like the classic stuff like Granith, Darthy, Op Agent, Ranger Captain. Hushbringer is kind of unique. I usually don't like counterintuitive cards, so having Hushbringer and Thassa's Oracle could be seen as a bit sus, but I think in a deck where the humility is the main plan of the deck, Hushbringer does complement that plan. Actually, it's Thassa's Oracle that's the most questionable card in this deck, maybe, but I still think it's worth it to have, even though it's not perfect. My biggest changes to the deck was I cut some of the cards that I felt was just extra. Smothering Tide is a great card, but I don't really have an payoff for the mana, usually. So I have had a couple of games where Smothering Tide made me like 20 treasures, and then I play a Ponder on my turn and pass. And that's not that great, in my opinion. Malevolent Hermit is also good, but it's a bit niched, and given the fact that we want humility in play, it doesn't really do anything. And the cards I added was Hushbringer as a second humility, kind of, not really at all, but almost. Lindel's Vault as an extra tutor, Doomsday as a 1-card win con, Mnemonic Betrayal as kind of a 1-card win con, Out of Time, great board wipe, Dovin's Veto over Miscast, because I think Dovin's Veto is a great counterspell to have access to, and then also Silent Clearing, because having access to an extra draw when you're trying to win with Jace is really great. It can really help you get through like interaction when you're trying to win. Like say they try to remove Jace in response to your ability, you can just direct the land and win on top of the removal. And that's really good to have access to in the deck. So that was a short summary of all of my decks in the MLC. Hopefully it gave you some insight to my choices, why I made them, and how I thought when reworking the lists. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me anywhere, either in the comments here, on Discord, or yeah, anywhere you can find me. I'm happy to talk about my changes and how I was thinking. All the deck lists will be in the description, and hopefully I will see you in the future. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.